When I was filling out the application for the Wendy's High School Heisman Award, I didn't really know that much would come.
It's teamwork. You communicate with...
What that involves is making sure I communicate and coordinate with each of the guidance departments.
We're building a ramp for someone who really
Don't
can't...
give up just because it's hard, because I had a lot of times where I thought I wasn't going to make it.
Hi, welcome to Hometown Heroes. I'm your host, Andy Kitzrow. Joining me today is Derek Wu. Welcome back, Derek.
Great to see you, Andy. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me, it's been, almost 10 years-ish. What have you been up to? Maybe give a little quick introduction for those folks of who you are, and then, what you've been up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Derek Wu. I grew up in Salisbury, Maryland. I'm a proud graduate of James M. Bennett High School's class of 2009. So it's kind of crazy to think 13 years ago.
I'm currently majoring in public policy. So I'm in the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Affairs at Princeton. I'm doing minors in finance and musical performance.
A lot's happened since then, but as of today, I just finished my PhD in public policy, focusing in applied microeconomics at the University of Chicago. Starting this fall, I'll be an assistant professor of public policy and economics at the University of Virginia. In the meantime, I'm serving as a postdoctoral scholar and the acting executive director of the Comprehensive Income Dataset Project at UChicago. And so kind of the irony is that, after leaving Salisbury with kind of every step with college and with my first job, with grad school, I've kind of moved further and further away. And then since then, I've been moving closer and closer back to Salisbury. So I'm excited to be around.
It's cool. It's interesting how our world is kind of full circle. I went away to school never thinking I'd return back to Salisbury, and
right
here I am. So it's fun. So let's drill down a little bit. From I think the last time we talked, you were going into college. I don't think we've really caught up since then. So let's take it a little bit step by step.
I'm a piano teacher at Princeton, and I've been taking lessons for 2 years now up there. And so yeah, it's been good. I came back last summer actually and performed at Asbury. But I also want to just say thanks to the Salisbury Arts Council because they gave me the scholarship to continue lessons at Princeton.
So tell us in a quick way, college, post-college and stuff like that.
Yeah, so college, I kind of moved 3 hours north of Salisbury to Princeton. I went to college at Princeton University. And so there I majored in public policy, focusing really on actually education policy. And a lot of that interest was inspired by the stuff that I did, with Youth Leadership Academy and with student government, and also work on the State Board of Education in Maryland. And then kind of during my summers in college, I had a chance to intern at a few places in DC. And so one summer I interned at the White House Council of Economic Advisors, which is an interesting kind of look at how, policy making worked in real time. And then I think in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do afterwards. I thought I wanted to go to law school. I thought about doing a PhD. And so afterwards, I ended up being a research analyst at this group called Ithaca Strategy and Research in New York City, where I worked on research relating to cost in higher education. And sort of the irony there is we were looking at the extent to which online learning could be a channel for reducing higher education costs. And kind of back then, it was kind of crazy to think about, and now kind of out of necessity with COVID, we've moved towards this, where schools have moved towards this virtual format. And I worked there for 2 years and realized that I would sort of probably be well suited to do a PhD. I really enjoyed doing social science research. Probably better at doing that than writing or reading legal briefs. And so I ended up going to grad school, and then so that was sort of another 6 years-ish of grad school, and so I'm finally on the flip side of that.
Is it Dr. Wu yet? Did I catch that or not yet? Doctorate?
Yeah, it is, but I sort of think of my dad as Dr. Wu, so Call me Derek. Still a little
Okay.
awkward.
So that's really interesting. I want to circle back to this, the Ithaca virtual learning thing. So yeah, this past year it has been COVID. It has been an interesting dynamic that we've seen out of forced to have to remote. What were some of the interesting findings of your research? Just some of your initial takeaways. That'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, no, those are a great series of questions. So when we, started this project, this was in 2013, 2014. It was really motivated by this increase in, net costs that students were paying at, especially in public universities. That it was a combination of increased tuition and decreased kind of state support for higher education. And this was kind of at the peak of the Great Recession as well. And sort of colleges, in that sort of economic, sort of tense economic time are sort of forced to, think about more creative ways to decrease costs and while improving access. And so online courses were one way in which people thought that could be done. And so you may remember kind of this whole thing called MOOC, this massive open online courses. And we had these companies called Coursera and edX that were offering these courses for free online. Anybody could get like a Coursera degree. And it was a way for people in sort of, Central Asia to take courses from Harvard or something. But, universities, kind of brick and mortar universities, were also thinking about for degree students and for tuition paying students, if there was a way to, maybe have online courses. And so what we did was we actually ran a few experiments, randomized controlled trials in a few universities where some students were assigned to a fully in-person course and others were assigned to either fully online or hybrid courses, right? So you would watch the lectures at home and then you would go to class for like a discussion section. And what we found was that at least for some of the introductory courses, like Intro to Stats, that this achievement effects on student achievement were pretty much the same across these different platforms, even though hybrid and online courses were could lower costs. Now, I think we've sort of seen with COVID that everybody has gone fully online, and that was people were forced to do that. And then now there's a shift towards some people are going back to fully in person or to a hybrid course where they would watch lectures at home and then kind of go to school to the in-person classroom for a discussion section. What we found was that in terms of achievement, effects of these platforms on achievement, they're really similar across these platforms. And that was the case kind of for these big introductory courses like Intro to Stats. And so either kind of similar achievement levels, even though those hybrid and online courses were offered at lower cost. And so that was, to us, was evidence that potentially they could be a vehicle for lowering cost while maintaining, at the very least, maintaining achievement levels. And so I think we've sort of seen that play out now where schools are moving towards fully online or hybrid courses. And I think in terms of the cost, it's really the initial fixed costs that are highest to move a course fully online. But we've sort of done those costs already. We've been forced to implement those costs. Schools have invested in those fixed costs. And the second thing is, this is a tougher thing, is just the lack of the in-person assistance, the in-person content a lot of students need. And so that's where kind of a hybrid approach can get the best of both worlds. So I think it's still a work in progress, but we've sort of just been forced to move in this direction. And so given that, I think it's important just to, given this new normal, figure out what are the best ways forward.
Let's talk about the social science research and what you are doing now with your public policy PhD. Where has this led you?
A lot of my kind of current research focuses on policy issues relevant to the low-income population in the United States. So using big data and economic methods to kind of empirically analyze questions of interest. And so one strand of research focuses on the causes and consequences of either enrolling or not enrolling in safety net programs. So whether that's food stamps or Medicaid. And so I have one paper looking, for example, at how the automation of welfare services, so moving from kind of this in-person support to phone or online interactions, impacts how many people enroll in a program and what types of people enroll in a program. And we usually think of automation as a good thing, that it improves convenience for applicants, it lowers costs for program operators, but at the same time, it can create burdens. It can, there's a lack of personalized assistance, and there can be a lower tolerance for errors on the part of computers or call center workers. And so what I found using a natural experiment in the state of Indiana was that such a change actually led to large declines in enrollment. And among kind of the folks who were kicked off, that the more needy folks ended up, being kind of kicked off by this change. And so this is sort of a cautionary tale about automation, which is important given, just during COVID, states out of necessity have moved towards kind of virtual interactions with welfare applicants. So that's kind of one paper that I'm working on.
Do you see, as we go down this path, I think we will continue to utilize more automation, customization, but how do we make sure it is not the end all? So like we do have this gap.
Yeah, those are I think huge issues. I think automation is here to stay in many ways. That society has moved, towards such a system. It's invested all these resources in building robots and in kind of enhancing MacBooks, and in many ways that I think are very beneficial to society. I mean, you look at medicine, for example, as one sector in which kind of increased technology has been a huge boon in terms of helping doctors with robots helping with surgeries and stuff. And but I think at the same time, it's going to have also negative effects on robots in certain cases will complement certain workers, and in other places will substitute for certain workers. So I think I think we really need to think about the sort of proliferation of automation in line with kind of education and skill training to make sure that people kind of in this new generation kind of keep up with what's happening. And so that means from a policy making standpoint, having a more nuanced view about these effects. And I think one of the things that I found in my research, for example, is this this automation on one hand among those who are exiting, those who are less needy are the ones screened out, and that's a bad thing. That automation is taking out those who really need a program. But among those who are not able to enter, it's actually screening out those who are less needy. And a lot of that is because it's reducing fraud at that margin. And that actually isn't a bad thing, right? When you have kind of computers that are better able to screen out those who are less needy. And so if you're a policymaker, you want to say, well, maybe we should adapt procedures differently across these margins, that you want to have more in-person contact at the recertification margin and maybe have more automation at the initial application margin as a cost-effective way to maybe reduce fraud. And so I think we need more of that type of thinking as these kind of very difficult issues come up.
I can spend all day talking to you about some of this stuff because it's real life issues that we're having to face, especially at the executive level decision points, budgeting to also just roll out implementation. Right. Let's scale back a little bit to you and your personal journey. We started off kind of through the Youth Leadership Academy and the idea of a group of teenagers coming together, creating something that's their own, peer-led, and then creating an opportunity for others to then become leaders, whether it's through automation or just what's been going on with your PhD. How are you seeing this evolution since you've been older through how maybe what you've learned when you were in high school through the Leadership Academy, or what you've understood about leadership in general or collaboration, and where we are going with this new generation of creating new leaders to kind of mix up the last 10 years of your life, and what have you kind of learned about yourself and then leadership evolution?
I think, can't say enough about, I think how lucky I've been, to have received all the help that I've gotten along the way, and so, I mean this, I can't think of a better place than Salisbury to have grown up. That it's a place where there are so many adults who are genuinely invested in providing opportunities to young people to succeed in ways both inside and outside of their comfort zone. And one of the ways is to, I think help instill, leadership and sort of kind of community service perspectives and skills in young people. And so I think for me, I think, I thought about, when I was in college, I would kind of major in, took a lot of classes in history and political science. I was thinking that maybe that could be useful for, law school, which maybe might be a direct way for public service. But I think for me, what I ultimately realized was I really enjoy doing research, policy relevant research, and that can be an avenue which I can contribute to society. And so I think in many ways, what my early experiences, as a high schooler, working at Youth Leadership Academy, working with you guys, learning from you guys, is that that community service is broadly defined. Community service is something that isn't just something, it's just something you want to do on the side, that, it's a mindset that you can embed into your professional life as well. And so for me, for my research, for example, I always seek to design research questions that have some sort of sharp policy application in mind. That research isn't useful unless it can actually be used to help change things or to help policymakers. A lot of times in academia, this sort of sole incentive is to publish in a top academic journal, which is great. But I think equally important is being able to communicate the results that you find to policymakers and stakeholders. And so, one of the things that I, was super excited about with my research was actually communicating it with, some policymakers. So I had a chance to share my paper with President Biden's Council of Economic Advisors, talk with a couple staffers of a few members of Congress on the House Ways and Means Committee who are interested in aligning application procedures across government agencies. And I think those are the ways in which, as a researcher, I thought I could contribute to society. And that's something that certainly was instilled in me from a young age.
Glad we're helping along the path. One of the things you brought up was like the policymakers and then stakeholders is where does the youth voice come into that stance? Because we think of policymakers traditionally, at least you're thinking about them, state level, federal level. There are programs which maybe we could drill down on some of that where the kids get to be part of the process. But how do you make sure the youth voice, a major stakeholder, the youth voice is still relevant within the youth policies, whether it is education or it is wraparound services or supports or anything that you want to think about?
Now, that's, I think, something that I think is not talked about enough. I think, young people, for example, aren't able to vote until they're 18. And I'm not saying we should lower that age, but, but they live in a world that is, it's a world that is designed by adults. And, in many ways, it's not a bad thing, but also young people have to live in that world. And so, I always think that if there are more ways for young people to get involved in things like, boards of education, that have student members, or kind of local organizations, or to volunteer in settings where adults are usually kind of on, the boards or whatever. I think that's more of that is good, both for the community to hear the youth voice, but also for youths to be involved in the community themselves, to kind of learn about how they can, contribute to society, and to kind of hear and meet and learn from a diverse set of voices that can influence them, and get help from people so they can pay it back in the future. Right. And so I think one thing that I'll just say is on the first thing I mentioned with the Board of Education, Maryland's one of the great states in the nation because it has a student member with voting rights on the Board of Education, and also various local boards also have student members as well. And so I think it's a good state to I think when it comes to youths having a voice, and so hopefully more states will follow suit. But I'll just put that plug in there.
One other thing, spinning your youthful mind on it. But knowing you're not there anymore, but you did kind of grow through the entire social media boom of all of the platforms that came online, came and gone. Some are still, joining that fray now. Is the youth voice via social media on just like climate change, the concentration and the fire that can be created globally behind a cause or a movement is pretty powerful. So they may not be at the true policy decision table, but millions of voices linked up over a unified front does create enough noise that does have influence over policy or decision making. I'm just interested on your thoughts of that power of social media within maybe the policy realm, or just seeing what has happened over the last several years when you have these big groups of people coming together, especially the youth, and rallying behind, whether it's gun violence or climate change or something.
Yeah, no, I certainly think that's a huge channel through which I think youths of sort of all backgrounds, right? Because not everybody, a lot of people use Instagram and Facebook. Well, I don't even know if that's what's hot nowadays, because I don't think people actually, but I think that's really one channel through which that's super important. And you're seeing kind of older people, policymakers or other stakeholders who are trying to keep up with the social media platforms themselves. I think in many ways, as a sort of sign of respect, a sign of respect for the youths who are and others who are using that as a huge platform. I think one thing that's a little tough is that these platforms often change so frequently, right? So like Facebook was big. Started being big in 07, 08. I think I got my Facebook around then. And then if you ask most young people today, probably a lot of them have moved on from Facebook and have moved to, Instagram. Maybe people have moved on from Instagram. And so there is this sort of fleeting nature of social media to some extent that, I don't think social media is a fad anymore. Certain parts of it are fads, but social media is here to stay. But I sort of worry about any kind of disconnect, communication disconnect because of how fast things change. But you certainly want to leave it to the youths to figure that out because they've gotten down pat.
You've spent majority of your adult career kind of in the education field and continuing on. Give us a forecast of the next 5+ years on where you want to go, what you want to do, what you're excited about.
I'm super excited about, the upcoming opportunity at UVA. I think one of the reasons I decided to, kind of continue in academia is to be able to interact with young people, both undergrads and graduate students, both in terms of teaching them as a professor and also advising them. It's something that was one of the things that I think got a lot of fulfillment from as a grad student is, serving as a teaching assistant for lots of courses and just talking to students and giving them advice on lots of stuff. And, in many ways, I think paying forward a lot of the help that I've received as a student. And so that's something that I'm super excited about. I'm really looking forward to, conducting research and continuing, working on, these policy relevant issues that I'm working on. And hopefully keep me up a line of communication with stakeholders as well. And ultimately, I think looking forward to, moving to Charlottesville. Again, it's not too far from Salisbury. I'm sort of moving back from Chicago. But yeah, so that's, I think I also, I sort of see that as what's happening the next, few years. And then I guess we'll see, life can throw curveballs, but I think so far I'm focused on that and excited about
Cool. That's, I'd like to have you back on the East Coast. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So Derek, fast forwarding after 10 years, you had an amazing recital, playing piano. Are you still keeping up with piano playing, or are you too caught up in school?
Well, a combination of both. I think it depends who you ask. You ask my mom or you ask someone else, you might get a different answer. But so it turns out, so in college, I actually ended up doing a minor in piano performance. And so I kept on taking lessons kind of throughout college. And then I had opportunities to perform and also, play in nursing homes kind of around the area. I think today I've kind of mostly been focused on school. I do have a keyboard at home, so kind of in our apartment that I do use. But I think you'd be surprised how much muscle memory kind of sticks. But I think in many ways, I sort of view the lessons that I learned from piano as having just broader impacts beyond just piano. So I think it taught me discipline, patience. In college, I had a chance to accompany lots of other folks and to play in chamber music groups, and there's a lot of nonverbal communication that happens there, so I think piano is one of those instruments where it's a solo instrument, and so a lot of times I can get to pianists' heads, but I think to have the opportunity to accompany others and play as part of a group, I think can be really valuable. But yeah, no, I think it's really certainly one of the most important, I think, aspects of my life, learning the piano. And when I go home and when I have a keyboard here, I still play, but not as intensely as I did before.
We just have a couple minutes left, Derek. Is there anything that any accolades or highlights that you wanted to hit on? Something we haven't really covered today that you wanted to kind of just share, some successes or anything else that you wanted to talk about or brag on?
Yeah, no, I think maybe one thing that I'll say is maybe reflecting back a bit, and if I were someone in high school, kind of what I would tell myself, I'd say it's super important just to take a variety of courses and participate in a variety of activities to challenge yourself. You might not think you're good at science, but you never know if you take AP Environmental Science. You might not think you're good at a sport, but you try out for a sport. For me, with I played piano for many years. It's classically trained, but I decided to do rock and roll revival. I thought it'd be fun, and it was a kind of a whole new challenge. It was a lot of fun, and I think you really know what you're good at or passionate about until you try new things. And so it's okay to try new things and fail. That's kind of how you learn. But at the same time, I would say to try and also be involved in community service, volunteer work, extracurricular activities. And when you meet and learn from people from all walks of life, I think that's when you realize that you can make a positive change in your community and in the world. And I think that's what ultimately gives life meaning. And so, that's what I would just say as a way of ending.
All right. Well, we'll go back in time and tell your younger Derek this. Well,
I carried the torch. There were 9 other amazing teenagers from all around the nation. I got the chance to meet Sean Johnson, Olympic gold medalist in gymnastics, and Stephen Lopez, who's Olympic Taekwondo gold medalist. And just, carrying the flame, the fact that it's traveled 12,000 miles around Canada, been carried by more than 3,000 individuals. And, it's a symbol of unity, of hope around the entire world. And just to carry it for 400 yards was a real surreal experience. It's really indescribable.
Hey, Derek, it's been a pleasure catching up with you. Just going to wrap up here, but I wish you the best of luck with with UVA and coming back to the East Coast and all the exciting things that you have coming up with some of those policy changes and things. So I'm looking forward to just catching up with you here in a few years. Or if you swing back through Salisbury, let me know.
Terrific. Yeah, it was great seeing you and love the discussion as well. Hope to see you soon.
Well, thank you everybody for watching Hometown Heroes here on Pack 14. If you'd like to nominate somebody to be featured on our show, please contact George Whitehead at giwhitehead@salisbury.edu or call 410-749-1480. See you next time.
You too can be a hometown hero on Pack 14.